All right, everybody. Hello to those of you who are here. In the spirit of our presentation being called time management, I felt like it'd be a good idea to get started on time. My name is Emily. For those of you who don't know, I work in the ILC Writing and Study Skills Center online this semester, but have worked at South Campus before. Hopefully everybody can see me. And I know some people will probably trickle in as we get started, and that's okay. But today's presentation, as you know, is called time management, which I'm sure a lot of you have heard this phrase thrown around before, maybe by parents, by teachers, by bosses, things like that. So today we'll be talking about valuable time management tips and strategies that you can employ as a student, as a worker, just as a person outside of school. And then what makes today's presentation a little bit different is we'll also be looking at time management with your course syllabus. So we'll be looking at an actual example course syllabus from an English 111 class to kind of show you, how to think about what a syllabus has to say and the different assignments and due dates and things on a syllabus and how we can kind of work that in with managing our time, managing our school responsibilities and duties, and then also managing our time outside of school. So what I'm going to do now is I'll share my screen, and most of you, I think all of you are muted and your cameras are off. But there will be times during the presentation where I will ask people to join in on the chat to offer some ideas, some thoughts, things like that. So feel free to also ask questions in the chat. I have some coworkers in here who will kind of help me monitor that, but I believe I'll be able to see the chat as well if people have questions along the way. But then I'll try to leave some time at the end as well for us to answer questions and concerns and things like that. Okay, so I will share my screen. Okay, hopefully everybody's surviving the heat. I'm about ready for fall. I don't know about you. Okay, let's see. So can everybody see my screen? If somebody wants to pop in the chat and make sure that we can see this. Okay, perfect. Thank you. I see a lot of yeses. Okay, so as you can see, this presentation is called time management and then managing your time alongside a course syllabus. So by the end of this presentation, just a couple objectives here. You should be able to do a couple of things. You should be able to know what to pay close attention to within a course syllabus, because there can be a lot of information in a syllabus. So we'll be talking specifically about the most important parts that you really want to pay attention to. You should be able to practice valuable time management strategies, which we'll get to a little bit later in the presentation. You should be able to schedule and plan time for school assignments, deadlines, work, and other life commitments outside of school. You should be able to prioritize, overcome obstacles, including procrastination. That'll be a fun one to talk about later on, and plan for the unexpected. And then finally, by the end of the presentation, you should be able to identify your ideal study scenario and also follow daily planning strategies that coincide with your preferred learning conditions. Okay, so what is a syllabus? I think most of us are probably familiar with the syllabus, but those of us who aren't, it's typically a document given to you by your instructor. It can be posted in Blackboard, or sometimes teachers will actually print out the syllabus and give it to you in an in-person class. But basically, it's an important document that communicates a lot of different things about the course. First and foremost, it includes learning outcomes and objectives. So similar to what we just looked at in the previous slide, about what we're going to learn hopefully at the end of the day today after the presentation. But similarly, a syllabus will communicate what you should be able to do or what you should know or learn about by the end of the course. So that's really important to take a look at. The syllabus also communicates the course mission, any goals, the topics that you'll be learning about in the course. It should communicate the teacher and student responsibilities. It will also include a detailed schedule with dates and assignments, and this is a really important aspect that we're going to be looking at later. It should include the grading system that your instructor will use, as well as sometimes just the grading system that the college uses overall. It should include academic integrity policies, things related to cheating, plagiarism, which we'll talk about in just a little bit. And then it should also include instructor contact information. So with what we just looked at on the previous slide, a syllabus seems important. Almost 60% of students transfer test dates and assignment due dates to a planner or calendar. However, now here's the interesting part. Only a handful of students actually will check their planners or calendars first for these due dates. So what that means is most go back to the original syllabus. And I want you to kind of think about why that might be, or maybe you can resonate with that a little bit. Maybe that's you. Additionally, many students who don't use a planner or calendar only reference the syllabus a few times throughout the course of a semester. So that's not necessarily ideal. We want to be looking at that more than a few times. So a course syllabus can contain, like I said earlier, a lot of information that's passed down from semester to semester, a lot of kind of recycled information that kind of is consistent or stays the same from semester to semester, like academic integrity policies, information about plagiarism, things like that. So for the purpose of this workshop, we're just going to focus on the most important items in a syllabus that you want to pay attention to. But it's not to say, a little disclaimer, it's not to say that you shouldn't read through the whole syllabus. We still want to read through the whole thing and take a look at it, even that some of that recycled, repetitive information from semester to semester. But there are, again, a few key areas that we really want to take a look at. So what do you pay attention to in a course syllabus? First and foremost, and I think this is primary, key assignments and assessments and their due dates. I think this is super, super important. Obviously, we need to know what's expected of you, what kind of assignments you're going to have to complete, any papers you're going to have to write, when those things are due, any tests coming up and when those tests will happen. All of that is really, really important and should be included in the syllabus. Required readings, this is also important to pay attention to, to look at what kind of textbooks you might need for the class, any other outside readings that you're going to have to acquire. And then other things you want to pay attention to, the professor's attendance policies and late work policies. And this was an interesting one that I found while I was researching that I didn't really consider before. But it is important to note if something unexpected comes up and you miss class for whatever reason, or something happens and you have to turn in a paper or an assignment late, it's important to know how your instructor is going to grade you on that. Are they going to take off points if your paper's late? Are they going to dock you a whole letter grade for something? Maybe there's some leeway in attendance or how late your assignment is. So that's important to take a look at as well. And I see some questions coming up that I'll answer in just a second, but these are all good things it looks like in the chat. It looks like James is helping me out as well. Perfect. Other things you want to pay attention to in a syllabus, the professor's office hours and email or contact information. This is a huge one. And unfortunately, in the ILC, we see students a lot who don't really know where this information is, or they're not really aware of it. And it usually, again, should be in the syllabus. Your instructors should post office hours, whether those are virtual or in person, and they should also post their email or contact information, phone number, how to best get in touch with them. This is really important. Obviously in the ILC, we're here for you and we can meet with you about any kind of concerns you have with your assignments or papers or things like that. But your instructor is also there for support and to answer questions and to meet with you. So it's important to know where this information is and to be able to find it so that you can get in touch with your instructor outside of class. And the syllabus will also include other support resources like us, the ILC, the REAL Center, impact coaches, advising. It should include, again, those learning objectives, things that you should be able to do or know or understand by the time that the course is over. Course prerequisites. This is an interesting one. What this means is these are knowledge or skills or things that you should be already know prior to going into this class, or classes that you should have already taken prior to the class that you're enrolled in. So let's say, for example, that you're taking English 112. A course prerequisite would probably be English 111. So different classes or things that you should know how to do or be aware of before enrolling in the class that you're currently in. So it's important to take a look at that just to make sure that you're in the right place and that you're setting yourself up for success in this particular class. And then one other thing that you can look for that's important in the syllabus, particularly for a writing course, is paper formatting requirements. Sometimes instructors will have, specific paper formatting requirements that they want across all kind of papers or writing assignments that you'll do for that class. So that's important to take a look at as well. Okay, so I'm seeing some questions come up here again, asking about the ILC. Perfect. Awesome, awesome. Good discussion. Okay, so what we're going to look at now is a sample syllabus. And what I want you to think about as we're looking through this syllabus is what kinds of things should you plan for? So again, there's a lot of stuff in a syllabus. We're not going to go over all of it because that could be a whole workshop in and of itself, but we are going to be taking a look at some of those really important parts of the syllabus. And as I'll ask this question again when we're done looking through the syllabus, but what I want you to kind of be thinking of is what kinds of things should you be planning for when you're looking at the syllabus? And if you think of some things and want to share some examples and ideas, that would be awesome in the chat. So I'm actually going to stop sharing that for a second and pull up the syllabus. Do you guys see the syllabus on here? I'll wait till I see some yeses. Yes, perfect. Thank you. So again, like I said before, a lot of what's in a syllabus is kind of recycled information that's just passed on from semester to semester. So we won't necessarily go through all of that. And like I said, this is an actual English 111 syllabus from Professor Wolverton. She was nice enough to pass this along to me for this presentation. Some of you maybe will have her this next semester. She's awesome. So it starts here with, some core values, some college policies. Here, I've highlighted some of the ones that I think are pretty important to take a look at. Here we have some information about the attendance policy. It says, let's see, part of it down here said students are expected to, here I'll highlight this, attend at least 90% of all scheduled class meetings. So that's obviously super important to know when it comes to attendance. There's also a lot of times links in here that you can click on to see more information about the topic that you're looking at, or it'll take you to the Wake Tech website to learn more about, attendance policies and things like that. Here we have more about tardiness and early departure, emergency closings, official communication with students policy, FERPA information. Here on this page, there's a couple of things I wanted to highlight. The student code of conduct, which is important in terms of, again, academic honesty and integrity. More information is located in this blue link here if you wanted to read more about that. Again, the academic integrity policy, here they have their expectations when it comes to cheating and plagiarism. It has examples of cheating here. For plagiarism, it has what plagiarism is and some examples. And this is something that we can also help with in the ILC. We have entire workshops devoted to what is plagiarism, how to avoid it, how to make sure that we're citing things correctly in our papers and our assignments. So if that's something that's a little bit worrisome to you or you want to learn more about, we would be more than happy to meet with you to talk more about plagiarism. Let's see, I'm going to keep going here. Academic penalties, that's important to take a look at as well. Here's the grading scale. And again, your instructor might have something a little bit more detailed and specific, which this one does, which I'll show you in just a little bit. Here are the success centers, so different support resources like we mentioned. So the ILC, Real Center, the Speak Center, which is a great resource for public speaking classes or oral communication. The Social Science Resource Center, Disability Support Services. So this is really helpful information in terms of what resources are available to you, COVID-19 protocols. Again, a lot of information in here, and I know I'm going through this quickly, but I want to kind of skip to some of those really important parts. Here now we're getting into specifically more information about this particular class, English 111. So here you'll see there's a course description. Here are the prerequisites. So it says that you should have ideally taken DRE 098 or English 002. It says that these must be completed prior to taking this course. So that, again, is good to take a look at to make sure that you're in the right place and that you're setting yourself up to be successful in this class. Here we have those learning outcomes. So again, by the end of the semester, these are all things that you should be able to do after you take this class. Let's see, student requirements. This is a little bit more detailed information about like the types of essays or things that students in this class would be working on. For example, it says that there's at least one essay of 4 typed double-spaced pages. Number 2, students will write at least one essay that uses direct textual support. So again, I won't read through all these, but these are some of the things that you would be doing if you were in this class. Classroom activities, blogs, journals, discussion boards, things like that. Here again is a more specific breakdown of how you'll be graded or evaluated. So this is important to take a look at. Out of class essays account for 60% of your grade in this class. And then assignments like class and homework assignments, discussion boards, quizzes, that accounts for 25% of your grade. And then that final exam, essay at the end of the semester is 15%. So this is good to take a look at as well, because some people might think, oh, I don't need to really do that discussion board or, that homework assignment, whatever. But, all that stuff does account for 25% of your grade. So definitely helpful to take a look at that in your syllabus. Here are the textbooks, the readings that are going to be required for the class. So you can take a look at this and make sure that you acquire those books beforehand. I know the bookstore at Wake Tech can be really, really helpful with getting those books. Sometimes your instructor too will have tips on how you can get those books. Here's other important information for students taking English 111, kind of talking about grading, it looks like, withdrawing. Again, we won't necessarily read through all that just yet. And then here on this page, this is now really specific, even more specific about this particular class and this instructor. So here at the top, you have the instructor's contact information. And this is what I said is really, really important. And, maybe the issue is sometimes students don't necessarily get this far in the syllabus, so they don't see the contact information from the instructor. But here it is, her virtual office hours, you can see her phone number, her email, which campus she's at, which classes she teaches. So this is super, super helpful, again, in terms of getting in touch with your teacher. If you have a question, if you want to meet with your instructor, they should be more than willing to meet with you and answer any questions that you have. Here are some specific instructor policies that are, again, specific to her. It looks like she's even bolded some really important parts that she wants you to read. I mean, like this one is here, huge here. After 2 missed in-person classes, you will be withdrawn from the course. So that's kind of a big deal. Want to make sure that we pay attention to, especially these bolded sentences here. Let's see, failure to complete. Here's another bold sentence. These assignments or completing an assignment but submitting it after the due date will be considered one absence. When you have missed 4 attendance assignments, you will be withdrawn from the course. So again, this is really important information to take a look at. Here again, we have the essay grade breakdown. So it looks like there are 3 main essays in this course. The first one is worth 15% of your grade. It's a problem solution paper. The next one is 20%. It's a source evaluation paper. And then the third one is an argument paper worth 25%. So that's all important information as well. Assignments grading breakdown. So it looks like discussion boards and activities are accounted for 10%. Quizzes are 10% of your grade. Reflections are 5%. Here she talks about when assignments and things will be due or submitted. It looks like Tuesday and Thursday nights at the end of the day, so basically before midnight. This is all really important information. Late work policies, like I said, some people might not, consider looking over this part, but I think it's really important to take a look at just in case something comes up and you have to turn something in late. Extra credit information, which we all love. Definitely want to take advantage of those extra credit opportunities. This is really interesting here. So she talks about how email is the most efficient way to communicate with her. So that's key. That's letting you know right then and there that if you have a question or concern or want to meet with her, that she'll respond via email, that's her preferred way to get in touch with you. She even has a little bit in here about email etiquette, which I think is a great idea, especially if you're kind of unfamiliar with how to address instructors or if you've never really written emails before to teachers. She has some really, valuable information or suggestions here on how to start out an email, what to include in your email, how to close an email. This is really just helpful for life in general too, how to address and close an email. Okay, so here finally, I know that was a lot of information. I tried to go through it as fast as I could, but here's where we're getting into now the schedule and the timeline of things for the class. So important information, it has the semester beginning and end date. Let's see, last day to withdraw without penalty, final exam week, breaks and days off. And then here is the course outline. So this is what I want to pay attention to when I asked you before, what kinds of things should you plan for? You can see here just like looks like week 0.5 and week 1 and week 2. There's already things that you have to do. Looks like some different assignments and things like that, different readings. So I'll scroll down to here again a little bit to week 3, week 4, week 5. So this instructor, again, is very specific on each week, what things are due, what things that you have to do in that week, what things you should be kind of working on or in process of working on. So as you're reading through this again, if you'd like to in the chat, I would love to see some people talk about some things that you should plan for. So just looking at this schedule, I'll keep scrolling and getting a little bit slowly, but I want you to kind of take this all in. Just looking at everything that's on this schedule, what kinds of things should you be planning for on a daily or weekly basis? Papers for sure. Yes. Papers for sure. Tests. Yep. And along with those, when the papers are due, when the tests are coming up. Class. Exactly. Biggest projects ahead of time. Yep. Looking at the due dates, projects. I start planning how I can make time to work on my assignments between my job and my home and driving in between. That is perfect. And we're going to talk more about that in just a little bit. I love that. Time to study. Yes. And we are going to be talking about time to study later on as well, because that's something I think that people forget about. Select a few hours each day in order to do the assignments in a timely fashion in order to do. Yep. Perfect. Plan for what to do and when to do the assignments based on personal life and due date. Yes, and we're going to be talking so much about that in just a little bit. I love that you guys are already on that topic. How much time do we need to spend on each online class? We will be talking about that in a little bit as well. Great question. Homework, tests, projects, of course, final exams, readings. I'm glad somebody mentioned readings. We're going to, again, be talking about how much time you should devote to readings each week, because that she's including on here. She has readings with specific pages and stories and things that you'll be reading. We need to take that into account as well. This is the most active conversation I've ever seen. I love that. Compare with other classes to see if other big assignments are due the same week or day as this class. That is huge. That is a great suggestion. Thank you, Lindsay. I love that. And again, what we're going to be talking about in just a second is how we can kind of keep track of all this information and all these due dates and things coming up, to make sure that we have time to work on them alongside other assignments and tests and papers like that for other classes. That's really key, Lindsay. Okay, so I'm actually going to go back to my PowerPoint. That's pretty much it for the syllabus. And again, she has a lot of weeks on here with things due. So this is a great example of a syllabus. I know sometimes, I will say, sometimes the syllabus is not as detailed as this. Maybe you've run into that before, where it's a little more general and not as specific, which, we can still work with that, especially if you want to ever meet with us at the ILC. We would be happy to look at your syllabus with you and to kind of plan out, when things are coming up, when things are due. If your syllabus isn't as detailed as this, we're definitely open to helping with that. Okay, so you guys did a great job with that discussion. Now I want to see in the chat, how can you make sure that you don't forget deadlines and due dates? So we're talking about how it's really important to account for tests and papers and homework and readings, but how do we make sure, and just thinking about you personally, how can you make sure that you don't forget these deadlines and due dates? Maybe things you do currently, things that have worked for you in the past. Knock pads. I have no idea what those are. If you want to share what that is, Anne, I don't know what that is, but I'm curious. Planners, calendars, set reminders. Yes. Yes. This is all awesome. Calendars, alarms. I carry around a personal planner book with me 24/7 with a pen attached. I can write down important times. Perfect. Calendars, notes, sticky notes. Yes. Always check the syllabus and write things down in your notebooks that you frequently look at. Yes, Kayla, very good. I set a specific time that I need to achieve something. Erin, that's great. We're going to be talking about more in a little bit. Reminders on your phone, which connects to your watch. I love that. I would set reminders a few days before on my phone to remind myself to start something even sooner. Yes, look at the class schedule. This is excellent. The chat is super active. I love it. You guys are giving great suggestions. Check emails, planner book. Yep, perfect. So these are all great suggestions. And, I would suggest, if some of these sound like things you'd like to try out or good ideas, take notes from your peers here. That's awesome. So again, leading into what you guys are already talking about in the chat, you've set me up for success here with this slide, but there are different ways to schedule. So like a lot of you said, we can use planners and calendars. That's kind of the standard old-fashioned way. You can use a print one, digital, or a combination of both. You can set alarms or reminders. I'm a big fan of that as well. I see people are still giving some suggestions. Oh, the knock pad. It's a notepad that has boxes, and each box, there are days of the week. Check boxes. That is awesome. Thank you, Anne. That's super interesting. I'm going to look that up. But the alarms and reminders, that's something that I really like. I'll have like I use the reminder app in my phone to keep track of things I need to get done that day or during the week. But then I also set alarms for things that I cannot forget, because sometimes the reminders sometimes just kind of like, you know, that I procrastinate, which we'll talk about more in just a little bit. But the alarms are more like in my face. I need to get this done now. Different phone apps, which, you know, I think some of you are talking about on here. But I do have some examples on the next slide of some apps that I kind of researched and looked up. Wall or desktop calendars, Post-it notes, Excel spreadsheets. If you're into Excel, I am not, but my husband really is. So, you know, I know there are a lot of Excel people out there. So this slide, and again, you will be getting a PDF of these slides, I believe. So you don't necessarily need to like jot down all this information super fast, or if you want to take a photo of this slide or something, you can. But these are some different apps that I found just by looking around online and seeing, you know, looking at reviews and what people like. I haven't really heard of a lot of these. I mean, maybe I'm not as tech savvy as I thought. Maybe I'm older than I think. But, you know, obviously I'm familiar with the Google, Apple Outlook calendar, as I'm sure a lot of us are. And like I said, at the end of the presentation, if we have some time, I can pull up my Outlook calendar and we can kind of look at, you know, how you can input events or activities or tasks that you need to get done. I'll kind of show you what that looks like. But all of you should have access to an Outlook calendar with your Wake Tech email, and probably also a Teams calendar. Good. Always Outlook calendar is really good. Yeah, I love Outlook calendar as well. I like Teams calendar. And again, I wasn't really familiar with a lot of these, but if you want to, you know, jot down some of these, or like I said, if you want to take a photo quick of this slide, otherwise you will be getting these slides later on if you want to check out some of these apps in your free time. So now how to actually schedule. Now that we know kind of what to plan for, you know, papers, readings, tests, and then different ways that we can schedule with a planner or phone apps or calendars, things like that, how do we actually do it? So the first thing that we recommend is to block out time that you're in class, in the lab, or at your job. And then make sure to factor in your commuting time. This is something that I really struggle with. I'll know that I have something going on at a certain time, but then I don't necessarily account for the time that it takes me to get there, or the time that it takes me to get ready. That's a huge thing that I struggle with. So make sure to factor in that time as well. And then block out the times when you have other commitments that are important to you. So church, sports, or working out, or volunteer activities, or family functions. And then put down scheduled events such as doctor and dentist appointments. And again, be sure to factor in travel time, and then allow a small cushion so that you're not rushing. Also, schedule time for how many hours you should spend studying for each class, usually from 6 to 12 hours, depending on the class. So I know a lot of you mentioned this earlier, and somebody I think asked how many hours you should be spending on each class per week. On the next slide, we're going to look at a more specific breakdown of this, but we suggest around 6 to 12 hours. So I know that can sound like a lot, and maybe that's freaking some of you out right now, or maybe some of you are like, oh yeah, that sounds about right. That's kind of what I do now. But again, we'll look at in the next slide kind of a breakdown of what that looks like, those 6 to 12 hours. But then try to budget in a little extra time for interruptions, delays, and other contingencies. Something I saw online that I thought was kind of interesting, but I think a good idea, is to assume that something unexpected will happen every day. This doesn't necessarily need to be a bad thing. Sometimes an unexpected thing is a good thing. You know, but to do this, try to schedule buffers to account for unexpected events that might cause your schedule or plan to shift. So this could be traffic, an unexpected meeting, or maybe an extended meeting that went longer than you thought. But these buffers can kind of help us to keep us on schedule and on track with everything else that we have to get done that day. And then the time that you have left is your discretionary time, used for, you know, going for a walk, playing video games, watching TV, reading, whatever you'd like to do. Okay. I'm looking at some of the chats here, the Outlook calendar. Miriam, like I said, if we have some time at the end of this, I want to make sure we get through the bulk of this information, but I will show you that Outlook calendar and how to add events to that if we have some time. Super fast speaker, sorry. I know I talk fast. I'm trying to just get through a lot. I'll try to slow down a little bit. And James suggested there are Outlook videos on YouTube. That's excellent. Okay, so here is kind of our little time matrix example here that we've come up with for a typical week in terms of how much time you should be spending on a class per week. So if your course is 3 credits, which is pretty standard, we recommend the time for reading the assigned text for 1 to 2 hours per week. And again, some of you might be thinking like, oh my gosh, that sounds like a lot. Some of you might be thinking, yeah, that's kind of what I do now. But that's really what we ideally suggest. And sometimes that can vary, from week to week. Some weeks, maybe you won't have any readings that you have to do. It just kind of depends. Time for homework assignments, we recommend 3 to 5 hours a week spending on those homework assignments. Time for review and test prep, we recommend 2 hours per week for a 3-credit class. And this is an interesting one too, because I know, sometimes, and I was guilty of this too as a student, where you have a test coming up in a few weeks. It's hard to kind of study for 2 hours a week in advance when you're like, the test, I got some time before the test. I don't really need to start right now, but it is really ideal to start that test preparation and review in advance, even putting in ideally 2 hours a week if you can, just looking over your notes, looking over PowerPoint slides, so that when it comes to the test, you're not all of a sudden, rushing and waiting till the last minute and trying to cram all this information in. So that's why we kind of suggest that 2 hours per week here. And this brings our total study time per week to 6 to 9 hours for a 3-credit class. Again, some of you might be thinking this is overkill or kind of overwhelming, or for some of you, this might be on par with what you already do, but this is just what we suggest. And I, even me looking at this, I kind of felt like it was a lot, but it really is true. I think a lot of students underestimate the amount of time that you have to spend on a class to be successful. Granted, you can spend less time if you want than this, but it might not give you the desired outcome that you want. So I think to really be successful in a class, you have to put in sometimes more time than you think. And then we also have an example for a 4-credit class. But ultimately for a 15-credit course load, which would be 5 3-credit classes, if my math is right, I'm not good at math, that would be 30 to 45 hours in a week. So again, it's just helpful, I think, to kind of see this time breakdown of, okay, how many hours a week should I be spending on my classes? What does that look like in terms of reading, working on homework, working on papers, reviewing test information, studying for tests, preparing for tests. And again, no need to, jot this down right now or anything like that. You will get these slides later on, so you can have this time matrix to kind of help you out with your planning. Yes, thank you for clarifying, James. 6 to 9 hours per 3-credit hour class per week. Thank you for clarifying that. Awesome. Okay, I'm going to keep going, but I love the comments. I can't wait to read them all in just a little bit. So again, for how to schedule, we're still on this topic of how to actually schedule. Let's talk about study time. So we just looked at this slide of how much study time we should ideally be putting in each week. What this looks like is try to schedule some time for every class weekly and calendar it. Put it in your calendar. This will help us keep up with class readings, with homework, discussion boards, and it helps us to eliminate cramming. Hint, cramming does not work. Even if you think maybe you've gotten away with it before, it really just isn't ideal, and it creates a lot of stress and pressure on yourself. So try to eliminate the cramming by scheduling some study time each week. And then be specific about when you'll study. So as specific as possible, like this example here, on Wednesday from 11 to 12, I'm going to study math at the library. That's super specific. And I find that the more specific you can be with your study times, the more likely you are to actually do it. It kind of holds yourself accountable. If you can see that in your calendar, or in your planner, in your phone, oh, on Wednesday, I have 11 to 12 blocked out to study math at the library. It kind of helps keep yourself in check to actually getting that done. And then we recommend small chunks of study time, so from 20 to 30 minutes, but you can, self-analyze. Longer periods sometimes work for people, but just be sure to give yourself breaks and rewards. We find that the amount of time that students can focus, can vary anything from anywhere between 15 to 30 minutes. But again, sometimes people can, work on papers or study or focus for 45 minutes or an hour. Just kind of test it out and see what works for you. But at the end of the day, give yourself some breaks. Give yourself some rewards, get up, walk around, look at your phone for a little bit, whatever. But try to keep those study times short, those short chunks of time. Using calendars. So this was one of the main methods that we talked about earlier in terms of how to actually keep track of everything that we have to do. You could create a term calendar to keep track of upcoming academic events and deadlines. You can color code subjects. I know a lot of people are into color coding or highlighting. I think that's sometimes a nice way to see, in a particular week, like if math, is in yellow and you have a lot of yellow in your week, that's going to be a week where you have to really make sure that you're putting in a lot of time for your math class, for example. And then what we also recommend is counting backwards 2 to 3 weeks to start upcoming big projects and then set mini deadlines along the way. And this is something that we can help you with, especially with like planning for papers and things like that. So what this means is, even if you know that you have a paper due not till the end of October, obviously put that final due date in your calendar or your planner, but also count backwards 2 to 3 weeks to set little mini deadlines for yourself. So maybe, 3 weeks out, you want to set a little mini deadline to have the first 2 pages of your paper due. And then maybe you set another mini deadline to have a whole rough draft due to show your teacher to come in to bring into the ILC. I think having these mini deadlines, again, can help hold yourself accountable along the way and to help you avoid procrastinating. Again, calendar study time, which we just talked about. Remember to be as specific as possible. And then check the calendar daily and check off completed work. This might seem kind of minimal, but I think it, at least for me, and I know for a lot of people, it kind of helps you feel good to check off your completed work and to feel good that you got something done. And then finally, make a list with in-your-face reminders, updating it regularly. So those in-your-face reminders, things that you really need to get done. Like I mentioned before, I like to have the alarms on my phone. That's really in my face of like, hey, you need to do this now. Okay, how to prioritize your tasks. So this is another aspect of time management. Obviously we have a lot of tasks and things we need to do in our day. So to figure out what needs to get done first, we need to learn a little bit about how to prioritize. So first, we recommend making a master list of everything that you have to do. This can be daily, it can be weekly, you can have both. I actually like to have both. I like to have a daily to-do list and then also a weekly to-do list. And then rank those items in order of importance, keeping in mind the long-term consequences and your goals. Then try to isolate and identify the activities that give you the best return. So what this means is, let's say you have a discussion board post due for one class and you have a paper due for another class. Obviously, when we want to get both assignments done, I'm not saying to just skip one, but in terms of which one is a priority, in terms of prioritizing your tasks, we want to make sure we get that paper done because it's probably worth more of your grade than the discussion board. So that's what that means, looking at the items that give you the best return and concentrating your time and effort on those items first. And then finally, schedule specific times every day for smaller reoccurring tasks. This can be like going to the grocery store, doing laundry, cleaning your house, things like that. It kind of helps to free up the rest of your day with your priorities. So overcoming obstacles is something that we also want to talk about with this topic of time management, because obstacles are going to happen. It's just inevitable. It's part of life. So in terms of resolving conflicting projects or tasks, what we recommend is to, again, set your priorities based on urgency and importance. So for example, if something's due tomorrow, that's obviously going to be a priority. And then also importance. Look at, again, which is worth more of your grade. Look at the percentages of the total grade. And then make a decision about what to work on and just move forward. Don't waste time debating your decision or feeling guilty. If possible, try to reschedule other things for a later time to make the time that you need now. Try to simplify, delegate if possible, and then even let some less important tasks go. Choose the tasks that have the biggest positive effect on your life. Kind of a funny example that we like to tell students is, if you have to get 2 things done, maybe one is cleaning your bathroom and one is working on a paper. Obviously, both are important, but the one that will have the biggest positive effect on your life now in terms of accomplishing your goals, moving on to your career, things like that, it's going to be that paper. So maybe, cleaning the bathroom can wait a little bit. And then ultimately don't multitask. Similar with cramming, multitasking ultimately just doesn't work that well. Try to work on one task at a time and try to eliminate distractions. Okay, let me just take a peek at the chat here. Sticky notes will be everywhere. I love that. I have to set intentions and be intentional. Perfect. Jira, it shows you mini tasks like an interactive to-do list. Thank you, Colin, for that suggestion. I'll have to look that up. I haven't heard of that one. Okay, so now we're moving on to everyone's favorite topic, procrastination. I know it's like a big scary word. And I wanted to see some activity in the chat here again, but procrastination ultimately is the act of putting off something that needs to be done. So let's get the conversation started. In the chat, if you feel comfortable, share as much or as little as you'd like, but name a situation in which you habitually procrastinate. And then maybe even think about what are the effects of this procrastination and what would you like to do differently in this situation? I can give you a second to think about everything. Yes, that's funny. So I'll give an example, paying bills. I was just going to say, Richard, I didn't necessarily procrastinate when I was in school as a student. I actually was I was really, overly on top of things and like felt like I had to get everything done right away. But I more procrastinate with things outside of school. Like, I have to get my oil changed. Like I've had to get my oil changed for probably the last week and I just like haven't done it. Everything, finishing work, writing poems. That's interesting. Reading my textbook for class. Absolutely everything. Putting off history a little bit because I struggle with it. That's a good point. Thanks, Colin, because what I wanted to mention too, that brings up an excellent point, is that some people will procrastinate with only certain classes. Like maybe if you feel like you're really good at English, you don't procrastinate in English, but maybe you do in a different class that you feel is a little more, not as much of your strength. Studying, anything that causes me stress. Yep, I hear that. Chemistry homework, longer assignments, staying up late, messing up my sleep schedule. That's an effect of procrastination. Exactly. I work best under pressure, so I procrastinate everything intentionally to pressure myself, but I don't want to anymore. That sounds like my husband. So my husband, he's a habitual procrastinator also, but he likes to think that he can like work well under pressure. He's like, oh, it works for me. It's fine. And I hear a lot of students say that too. They're like, well, it works fine for me, but does it really? So we'll overly stressed, dreading a certain assignment. Yes. Perfect. I love this discussion. I can't wait to look at this more in detail later. But yeah, so again, part of what I like is that this shows that all of us procrastinate really in some shape or fashion. Some of us with school, some of us with outside of school. So it happens to us all. It's nothing to be ashamed about, but thankfully there are some ways to kind of deal with it and overcome it. So some reasons for procrastinating, which some of you mentioned in here. The first one is trouble with goal setting. Maybe we're setting unrealistic goals or timelines, or we're not setting goals at all. Maybe we're not believing in our ability to complete a task. Maybe we don't believe in ourselves in general. Maybe the task seems too hard to do or too time consuming. Maybe there's a lack of knowledge or skills needed to complete a task or thinking that you do. That's kind of key right there. So thankfully, again, there are some strategies to overcome procrastination. Try to weigh the rewards and the consequences of completing the task versus putting it off. I know somebody mentioned, sleep and sleep schedule and stress. Those are obviously some of the consequences of putting off the task. Try to set reasonable and specific goals as well. So this example here, something like I will study biology 3 nights this week instead of I will study biology all weekend. First of all, the last one is kind of stressful and is also not very specific. Like earlier when we were talking about calendaring specific study time, it's much more ideal to say something like I will study biology 3 nights this week. It's very reasonable, it's specific, it's intentional. I like that word that somebody used in the chat. And then just get started. Sometimes going from nothing to doing something is often the hardest part. So just get started. And again, this is something we can help you with in the ILC. We can kind of, when you get an assignment or a paper assigned, we can meet with you and kind of help you come up with a timeline, help you figure out how to get started. Try to break the task into smaller parts and ultimately ask for help. That can help as well with procrastination. Some additional strategies: ask yourself why you're procrastinating and address the underlying issues. Try to get a little deep with it. Find the reason and then do the opposite. So if you think that the project is too big to complete, you can think to yourself, I can do this if I break the project or task up into smaller chunks. If you think you don't have time to complete the project or task, try telling yourself, I will just work on it for 10 minutes. Try to be positive and proactive, and also reward yourself as you complete tasks or move forward on projects. We talked about this idea of rewarding yourself earlier, but it really can help you kind of hold yourself accountable, stay on track, keep moving forward in the process. So thankfully, there also are some benefits to overcoming procrastination. Peace of mind, a feeling of strength and purpose, a healthy feeling of being in charge of your life. While procrastination can often make us feel weak or useless or even helpless, taking charge of our lives will make us feel strong, competent, and capable, and you will experience increased personal freedom. I know it sounds a little corny, but it's very true. Okay, so some final points to remember here. We're nearing the end. I want to make sure that I get you guys out of here on time. Yeah, if you have to leave, that's fine as well. We're almost done here. But at the end of the day, when it comes to managing your time and your schedules, know yourself well. Schedule projects and studying during your peak hours, not your valley hours. So, some of us are night people, some of us are morning people. Try to figure out what works well for you. We recommend daylight hours for reading, studying, problem solving, some of that, critical thinking, using our brains a lot. And then the nighttime hours are better for light review, non-academic commitments, nothing major, no cramming, nothing like that. And then figure out what's your concentration limit. Again, maybe it's 15 minutes, maybe it's an hour. Just try to not plan intolerable amounts of study or homework time. Take breaks as needed, avoid distractions, join study groups only if you're a group learner. Some of us are not, and that's okay. I never really was, but if you're a group learner and that works well for you, I think that's a great idea. And then don't lose sight of your academic goals. A couple other strategies to keep in mind. I promise we're almost done. Do not allow others to sabotage your schedule. And this is really hard for me. I'm sure it's hard for some of you as well, but say no to requests for your time that do not directly relate to your goals and values. And again, I know that is so hard. It's obviously sometimes more fun to go do other things versus writing a paper or studying or reading, but think about your goals and your values and what you're at Wake Tech for and what you're trying to accomplish, and say no to other requests if you have to, and those people will understand. Similarly, find an accountability partner to help keep you on track. I think that's a great idea as well. Make sure the items on your schedule are your priorities. We talked about prioritization earlier. Try to automate as much as you can on your schedule. We talked about this a little bit earlier, but scheduling minor or routine tasks for certain days and times, such as filling the car with gas, getting groceries, and then batch related tasks into back-to-back time blocks. So for example, try to schedule study or review time for a specific course, either right before or right after the scheduled class time for the course. That can it helps just the information materials stick in your brain a little bit better if you're looking at it, right before, right after the actual class. Okay, so a daily planning strategy. These are some, kind of concrete recommendations that we have here in terms of how to actually put all this stuff into practice. So what we recommend is spending 5 minutes at the beginning of each day to make sure that you've identified the most important tasks that you want to complete. Then take a look at your calendar or planner to check for upcoming due dates or deadlines. Also check for other life commitments going on that day and try to plan for potential obstacles that might come up. Then refocus during the day. Are you working on the important priorities you've identified, or have you been sidetracked a little bit or distracted? If it's the latter, get yourself back on track. This step is important because it forces us to manage our day hour by hour so that we don't let the hours manage us. I like that point. Then finally, at the end of the day, spend 5 minutes for review. What worked? What did not? What distractions came up? What interruptions did you have? How can you eliminate or reduce these in the future? What did your most focused times of the day look like? Was it in the morning? Was it in the afternoon after you ate lunch? Things like that. Use all the information gleaned from this review to make your next day more focused and more productive. And I believe that's it. And there's our email. But I know James included some links in here as well to make an appointment with us this semester. We would love to see you all at some point. I'll stop sharing my screen here. Does anybody have any questions or anything? Actually, before I stop sharing my screen, if you want to hang around, I'll show you really quick just what the Outlook calendar looks like for somebody mentioned it in the chat. This is my calendar. As you can see, let's see, today is Friday the 13th. Here I have the workshop that we're in right now. But if I wanted to add an event, I go over here to this blue button that says new event. And you can, I could just say, and again, it doesn't really have to be an event. You can just say, study for English. And then you can set a time. You can change the date. You can set a reminder, which I think is really awesome. It'll kind of ping you on your computer. You can add a description or attach documents. And then you just click save and it'll save to your calendar. So that's just kind of what the Outlook calendar looks like. I'm just going to see if there's other questions here in the chat. Yes, I believe you'll be able to watch this later. I think we're recording it. Yep, all recordings will be posted on the website. Perfect. Can we get access to this PowerPoint? Yes. I believe we'll be sending out the PDFs of the PowerPoint slides. Thank you, Anne. Thank you, everybody. I hope it was helpful. I hope you got some great tips. I know it was a lot of information. So like I said, if you'd ever like to meet with us one-on-one in the ILC to talk more about this stuff, to talk more about time management strategies that would work for you, different study strategies, how to kind of approach a project or a task or an assignment that you have coming up, we would love to help with that. Can you explain the study time for a 4-credit course? Yes, I will go back to that slide in just a second. 1.5 pages of notes. That's awesome, Aaron. Thank you, Kay. Thank you, everybody, for attending. That's basically the end. If you have to leave or want to get going, you can. If you want to stick around, I'll quick show my screen again, and I'll pull up the little time matrix chart that we looked at if you want to see for the 4-credit course. But again, you should be receiving these slides as well. So you'll be getting a copy of this that you can keep handy. Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for the kind words.